Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said I was too obsessed with intimacy on a Tuesday morning, right after she adjusted her blazer and checked her phone for the third time in under a minute. We were standing in the kitchen, sunlight cutting across the counter like a clean blade. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The sentence was calibrated, meant to reframe me as the problem. Needy. Excessive. Unfocused. I remember nodding once. Not because I agreed, but because my mind had already switched modes. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 39. I work in cybersecurity. I build systems designed to assume breach, not loyalty. Protocols don't care how long you've been trusted. The moment behavior changes, you log it. You don't accuse. You observe. She was a marketing director. Lived on momentum, meetings, energy. Her mornings used to start slow. Coffee at home. Silence. Lately, they started earlier. Starbucks cups appeared in the trash before I woke up. She said they were quick work check-ins. I didn't ask follow-up questions. Questions tip your hand. When she said intimacy like it was a defect, I realized something clean and final. We were no longer talking about closeness. We were talking about access. And she was already negotiating it elsewhere. That night, I lay awake while she streamed something on Hulu, the glow of the screen washing over her face. She laughed once. A short sound. Not for me. I stared at the ceiling and ran a quiet inventory. Schedule shifts. New passwords on her phone. A calendar that had become selectively visible. Nothing dramatic. Just drift. Drift is where breaches start. 2 days later, I stopped by Best Buy on my way home and bought a new laptop. Nothing flashy. I didn't tell her. I didn't need to. I set it up after midnight, migrating pieces of my life over in silence. Files. Accounts. Logs. Not evidence. Structure. She started asking questions after that. Not directly. Small things. Why I wasn't initiating. Why I seemed distant. She framed it like concern, but her eyes kept checking her phone. Someone else was syncing their expectations to her time. I still came home. Still slept in the same bed. Still drove the same Toyota Camry to work every morning. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, I had already stopped needing answers. The shift didn't announce itself. It never does. It arrives disguised as convenience. She started staying out later on Thursdays. Said client dinners were running long. Venture types, she explained once, didn't respect office hours. I accepted that without comment. In my field, you learn that explanations offered without pressure usually serve the speaker, not the listener. Her phone habits changed next. Face down on the table. Always on silent. Screen lighting up with names I didn't recognize, then going dark the moment I entered the room. She still ordered things on Amazon for the house. New throw pillows. Storage bins. A countertop organizer. All the signs of someone trying to stabilize a space while destabilizing everything underneath it. I didn't confront her. Confrontation is noise. Noise alerts people. I kept my routines intact. Left for work at the same time. Came home within the same window. Ate dinner when she was there. Nodded when she talked about campaigns and metrics and potential investors with vague enthusiasm. She spoke faster now, like she was pitching even when she didn't need to. One night, she asked why I hadn't touched her in days. The question was framed lightly, almost playful, but it landed heavy. I told her I was tired, which was true, just not in the way she meant. She studied my face longer than usual, like she was waiting for a tell. I gave her none. After that, I started eating late. Sitting in the car with a paper bag from McDonald's, parked 2 blocks away, engine off. I'd watch the house lights. Note when hers turned on. When they went dark. Not surveillance. Calibration. She didn't notice the distance growing because she was measuring something else. Attention. Status. Momentum. The things she fed on were no longer coming from inside the house. I could feel it in the way she spoke my name, like it belonged to an earlier version of her schedule. At work, I tightened my own perimeter. Migrated personal accounts off shared devices. Changed recovery emails. Nothing that would trigger suspicion. Just reducing attack surfaces. Quiet work. She brought up intimacy again that weekend. Framed it as concern, but there was irritation under it now. As if my lack of pursuit was inconveniencing her narrative. I listened. Let her finish. Didn't argue. Silence makes people fill space with truth. That night, she fell asleep to Hulu murmuring in the background. I stayed awake, staring at the dark, realizing something precise. She wasn't pulling away because I wanted her too much. She was pulling away because someone else wanted her for different reasons. The confirmation didn't come as a message or a confession. It came as a pattern. She started dressing differently on days she said were internal meetings. More tailored, less comfortable, the kind of outfits that assume an audience. She left earlier, moved faster, kissed my cheek like she was checking a box. The Starbucks cups kept showing up in the trash, but the timing was wrong. Too early. Too intentional. I stopped assuming anything. Assumptions make you sloppy. I observed instead. One evening, she showered the moment she got home. No greeting. No small talk. Just straight past me, heels in hand, bathroom door locked. Steam filled the hallway. She came out changed, lighter somehow, and opened Amazon on her phone like nothing had happened. Scrolled. Added items to the cart. Domestic camouflage. I nodded from the couch and said nothing. She wanted a reaction. Concern. Jealousy. Anything that would recenter her. I denied her that quietly. At work, I began mapping timelines the way I would during an intrusion analysis. Inputs. Gaps. Delays. Her calendar had blocks labeled client sync. Always the same duration. Always offsite. Always followed by a shift in mood. Elevated. Untouchable. Like she'd been validated somewhere else and was carrying it home as a shield. One night, she mentioned an investor without naming him. Just he. Said it casually, assuming I wouldn't notice. I noticed. People don't anonymize what they're proud of unless there's risk attached. I didn't ask questions. Instead, I made space. Less eye contact. Fewer check-ins. I started sleeping closer to the edge of the bed. Physical boundaries change emotional math. She noticed, but she misread it as withdrawal, not defense. That's when she asked, half laughing, when I'd stopped needing her. The question wasn't curiosity. It was alarm. Need is leverage. My absence of it was disrupting her balance. I told her I'd been busy, which was true, just not with what she thought. Later that night, while she streamed Hulu beside me, I realized something else. This wasn't about sex, or attention, or even betrayal in the traditional sense. It was about hierarchy. She'd found someone who made her feel elevated. Someone who didn't ask, only offered. Access. Rooms she hadn't been in. Conversations she couldn't buy alone. I didn't hate her for it. I understood it. But understanding doesn't mean accommodation. That week, I stopped adjusting my schedule to match hers. Stopped waiting up. Started eating late again. Alone in the car, the house dark behind me. I felt calm. Focused. She thought I was pulling away. What she didn't realize was that I was already building a perimeter she wouldn't be able to cross. Distance changes the temperature of a house before it changes anything else. She felt it before she could name it. Started lingering in doorways. Asking questions that weren't really questions. Whether I'd be home for dinner. Whether I was okay. Whether work had been stressful. Each one was an attempt to re-establish signal strength. I answered calmly. Briefly. Nothing that invited follow-up. I shifted my routines again, just enough to stay unpredictable. Left earlier some mornings. Came back later others. I stopped narrating my day. Silence is unsettling when someone is used to access. She filled it with updates about herself instead. Campaign wins. New connections. An investor who really got her vision. She said it like she was waiting for approval. I gave none. One night, she cooked. A full meal. Candles. Soft music. The Hulu screen stayed dark for once. It was a performance. I thanked her. Ate slowly. Talked about nothing personal. She watched me the entire time, like she was trying to find the seam she could pull to unravel whatever I'd become. Afterward, she asked if I still found her attractive. Not directly. She framed it as concern again. I told her attraction wasn't the issue. Which was true. Attraction hadn't left. Access had. She didn't push further. She smiled instead. But there was calculation behind it now. That weekend, she left early for what she said was a strategy brunch. Starbucks cup in hand. Outfit precise. She kissed me quickly and disappeared. I waited an hour, then drove off in the Camry and parked near the river. Sat there with my phone on silent, finishing a late breakfast from McDonald's, watching the water move without intention. I wasn't tracking her. I didn't need to. I already knew the shape of the threat. What I was doing instead was detaching my nervous system from hers. When you stop reacting, the other person loses their map. She came home energized, talking faster than usual. told me how exciting things were becoming, how she felt like she was finally stepping into a bigger version of herself. I listened, nodded once. She paused, waiting for something. Praise, fear, jealousy. I gave her quiet. Later that night, she lay closer than she had in weeks. Hand on my chest, testing the perimeter. I didn't move away. I also didn't lean in. Neutral ground. Her breathing changed. Shallow, uncertain. That was the moment I knew the balance had shifted. She had expected resistance or pursuit. What she hadn't planned for was peace. Peace isn't loud. That's how it survives. She started noticing the absence the way people notice missing furniture. Not immediately, but once they try to lean on it. She reached for me in small ways first. Casual touches. Comments about memories. References to trips we'd taken years ago. Anchors. I let them drift past without grabbing on. I spent more time in my office at home, door half closed, working on the new laptop I'd bought weeks earlier. The one from Best Buy. It held everything that mattered now. My finances. My contacts. My personal logs. The rest of the house felt like a shared network I no longer trusted. She hovered once, pretending to look for something. Asked what I was working on. I told her it was routine maintenance. Which wasn't a lie. Maintenance is what you do when you expect systems to fail eventually. Her evenings grew restless. Hulu ran longer, louder. She scrolled Amazon beside me, ordering things we didn't need. Storage solutions. Decorative fixes. Temporary patches. She was trying to stabilize an environment that had already lost its core process. One night, she mentioned the investor again, this time with a name, quickly, like she was testing how it sounded in the room. Older. Established. Successful. She talked about him like a door that had opened unexpectedly. I nodded once. Neutral acknowledgement. No questions. That's when the tone changed. She asked why I never seemed jealous. Not accusing. Confused. As if jealousy was proof of relevance. I told her I trusted her judgment. Which landed wrong. Trust, without dependence, feels like dismissal. After that, she tried warmth. Cooked again. Lingered longer. Slid closer in bed. Her hand traced familiar paths, searching for reflex. I didn't reject her. I also didn't respond the way I used to. Calm. Present. Unavailable. Later, alone in the car, eating McDonald's with the engine off, I felt something settle into place. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. I realized I wasn't withholding intimacy to punish her. I simply didn't feel compelled to offer it anymore. She sensed it too. Her questions sharpened. When had I changed? Why I seemed so distant? Whether I still needed her? The last one came out quiet, almost afraid. I didn't answer immediately. I didn't need to. The truth was already shaping itself in my actions. I wasn't retreating. I was repositioning myself somewhere she couldn't follow without losing the very leverage she'd built her new life on. Control doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when someone realizes they no longer have it. She started circling me more deliberately, waiting up, asking what time I'd be home, commenting on my schedule like it was a shared resource again. I answered politely, vaguely. My calendar was no longer a point of negotiation. It was a closed system. One evening, she brought up the investor directly, framed it as transparency, said he'd been generous with advice, that he believed in her talent, that doors were opening. She watched my face carefully while she spoke, measuring impact. I kept my expression level. People who are used to leverage panic when it stops working. After that, her tone shifted. Less confidence. More testing. She asked if I felt disconnected. If something was wrong between us. I told her things were stable. Stability, without reassurance, unsettles people who thrive on feedback loops. She started ordering less for the house. Amazon packages slowed. The attempts to fix the environment had lost urgency. Instead, she focused on me. Tried to re-establish routines. Suggested weekend plans. Asked if I wanted to grab coffee together, like we used to. Starbucks had been our place once. I said maybe. Maybe is a soft no when you don't owe an explanation. At night, she reached for me more often. Not desperate. Not yet. Just persistent. Each time, I responded with calm presence and no escalation. I wasn't withholding affection. I was removing dependency. There's a difference, and it changes the power dynamic completely. I spent more time outside the house. Sitting in the car after work, engine quiet, letting the day drain out of me before I went inside. I wasn't avoiding her. I was reinforcing boundaries internally. Once those are set, behavior follows naturally. She noticed the shift in herself before she noticed it in me. Her questions became sharper. When had I stopped needing her? Why I didn't seem bothered by her success? Whether I still cared. Care, when it's no longer reactive, feels cold to someone who equates intensity with value. I told her I was proud of her, which was true. Pride doesn't require proximity. That night, she lay awake while I slept easily. I could feel it in the way the room held tension. She was recalculating, trying to understand where she stood now that I wasn't chasing alignment. What she didn't know was that I wasn't pulling away to punish her choices. I was stepping into a version of myself that didn't require permission, validation, or access to feel complete. And once someone realizes you're no longer reachable on those terms, everything else starts to unravel quietly. The first real crack showed up as irritation. She stopped pretending everything was fine and started reacting to small things. A delayed response from me. A neutral answer where she expected reassurance. My calm had become an obstacle. She couldn't argue with it, so she pushed against it instead. One evening, she asked why I never seemed curious anymore. Not just about her work, but about her. The question wasn't soft. It was edged. Curiosity, to her, had always meant pursuit. I told her I trusted her to handle her world. The words were clean. Final. They landed heavier than any accusation. After that, she began narrating her days louder, faster, like volume could force engagement. She talked about meetings, dinners, introductions, about being seen, being valued. She kept mentioning the investor's circle without naming it directly. Private rooms, quiet influence. I listened without interruption. Silence makes people over-explain. That night, she stayed up late scrolling on Amazon, adding and removing items without buying anything. Restless behavior. Displacement. The house felt smaller to her now, less responsive. I sat in the other room, reading, not looking up. She wanted to feel missed. I let her feel unseen instead. At work, my own life had narrowed into focus. Fewer distractions, cleaner routines. I moved through my days without friction. Ate late again, alone in the car, letting the noise of the city fade while I finished a simple meal from McDonald's. There was something grounding about the repetition. Same place, same quiet, no negotiations. She started asking about my plans. Long-term, vague questions about the future framed as curiosity. I answered in general terms. Work, stability, health. Nothing that tied me to her trajectory. People sense detachment before they can prove it. One weekend morning, she suggested coffee together, like it was a reset button. Starbucks had once been our shared pause. I told her I had an early call, which I did, just not the kind she imagined. Later that day, she asked again when I'd stopped needing her. This time, there was no humor in it, just fear. Need had always been her metric. My lack of it was erasing her position. I didn't correct her, because the truth was simple and irreversible. I hadn't stopped needing her overnight. I'd stopped organizing my life around being needed at all. And once that switch flips, the old dynamics don't come back. They just linger, waiting to be acknowledged as obsolete. By the time she realized something was actually wrong, it was already too quiet to fix. She stopped testing and started pressing. Not loudly, carefully, asking direct questions instead of circling. Whether I was unhappy, whether I was thinking about leaving, whether there was someone else. The last one was projection, and we both knew it. I answered each question evenly, without defensiveness. Calm unnerves people who expect escalation. She tried to reassert closeness through logistics. Suggested syncing calendars. Asked if we should plan a trip. Talked about future months like they were already agreed upon. I listened and nodded without committing. Non-answers feel like rejection when someone needs certainty. At night, she went back to familiar routines. Hulu playing in the background while she scrolled her phone, pretending the house still responded to her presence the way it used to. I sat across the room, focused elsewhere, not avoiding her, just not orienting toward her. Orientation is a form of consent. One evening, she finally asked what had changed. Not angrily. Tired. The kind of tired that comes from sensing loss without being able to locate it. I told her I'd been prioritizing peace, which was the truth, stripped of drama. That word stayed with her. Peace. It didn't fit into her framework. Peace doesn't require witnesses. It doesn't generate momentum. It doesn't elevate status. It simply exists, self-contained. She grew quieter after that. more observant, less performative. The Amazon orders stopped almost entirely. The house froze in time, like a staged environment waiting for approval that wasn't coming. I spent more evenings outside, sitting in the car after work, watching the streetlights come on one by one. No music, no phone, just space. I wasn't avoiding conflict. I was refusing to manufacture it for clarity. Clarity had already arrived. She started sleeping restlessly, waking up when I moved, watching me like she was afraid I'd vanish if she looked away. That fear was new. It wasn't about losing me to someone else. It was about losing her position in my internal hierarchy. One morning, she left early again, coffee in hand. Not Starbucks this time. Something unbranded, rushed, uncertain. When she kissed me goodbye, she held on a second too long. I stood there after the door closed, feeling nothing spike or drop. That's when I knew the strategic distance had done its work. She was still in the house, but the access she once had was already gone. The unraveling didn't come with a confession. It came with loss of timing. She started coming home earlier than usual. Not eager, watchful, like she was trying to catch me in a moment I no longer broadcast. She'd sit across from me at the table, scrolling without focus, waiting for me to look up first. I didn't. When people are used to being the center of gravity, stillness feels like rejection. She asked if I thought we needed help. Counseling. A neutral third party. The suggestion was framed as maturity, but the urgency underneath it was unmistakable. She wanted mediation because she could no longer read me. I told her I was fine with how things were. Fine is a dead end when someone is negotiating for reassurance. After that, she became careful. Too careful. She stopped mentioning the investor entirely. No stories. No casual references. Silence in that area was louder than any admission. She thought removing the stimulus might restore the old balance. But balance doesn't return once the weights are gone. The house felt suspended. Hulu played less. The background noise she used to drown out discomfort had failed her. Amazon boxes didn't arrive anymore. No more attempts to optimize the space. She had shifted from control to preservation. One evening, she sat beside me and asked, very quietly, if I still needed her in my life. Not wanted. Needed. The distinction mattered to her. Need was her leverage point. I took a moment before answering, not for drama, but because I wanted the words to be precise. I told her my life was stable, that I valued calm, that I wasn't operating from lack anymore. I didn't say her name. I didn't frame it as a rejection. I let the absence speak. Her face changed. Not anger. Something closer to vertigo. Like she'd stepped into a room where the floor plan had been altered without notice. She nodded once, slowly, as if acknowledging new information she couldn't undo. That night, she barely slept. I could feel it. The subtle shifts. The quiet sighs. I slept deeply. When your system is aligned, rest comes easily. The next morning, I left early. Sat in the car for a few minutes before pulling out, watching the house in the rearview mirror. Nothing dramatic. Just a structure that no longer defined me. She texted later, asking when we could talk. I read it, put the phone face down, and went back to work. I wasn't avoiding the conversation. I was choosing the timing. And for the first time, she wasn't the one setting it. The conversation happened without theatrics. No raised voices. No dramatic reveals. Just timing. I told her we could talk that evening. Not immediately. Not urgently. When I got home, she was already there, sitting at the table, hands folded like she was waiting for a verdict. I noticed how still she was. Stillness looks different when it's not chosen. I didn't sit across from her. I stayed standing. Not as a power move. Just because I didn't feel like settling into something that no longer fit. She started explaining before I asked anything. About pressure. About opportunity. About how she'd felt unseen before and how someone else had noticed her. She avoided details. I didn't need them. I listened without interruption. When she finished, she waited. That pause was familiar. It used to be my cue to reassure, to bridge, to repair. I didn't. I told her I wasn't angry, that I understood the mechanics of what she'd done. Status attracts. Access seduces. I said it evenly, like I was describing a market trend. She nodded, relieved for a moment, mistaking calm for forgiveness. Then I told her I'd reorganized my life around peace, that I wasn't interested in negotiating access anymore. That intimacy, when it becomes currency, loses its meaning to me entirely. She asked if that meant I was leaving. The question wasn't dramatic. Just scared. I told her I wasn't disappearing. I was simply no longer available on the terms she'd grown used to. The house would remain shared for now. The routines would stay civil. But the perimeter was set. No more assumptions. No more emotional reach-through. She asked when I'd stopped needing her. I answered honestly, quietly. I told her it happened the moment she framed my desire for closeness as a flaw. When connection became leverage instead of bond. That's when something shut off, clean and irreversible. Later that night, I drove the Camry through empty streets, picked up a late meal from McDonald's, and sat in the car longer than necessary. The city felt wide, neutral, uninvested, exactly how I wanted it. When I came home, she was asleep on the couch. Hulu paused mid-episode. I turned off the screen, grabbed a blanket, and covered her. Not out of obligation, out of closure. Some people mistake silence for weakness. They don't realize it's what remains when you finally stop needing anything back. That's when peace takes over. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.